Thank you so much, guys, for joining me tonight. I definitely had a lot of fun playing with this version of the palette knife flower. And, you know, once I start playing with things, I swear the second time around, I can never do things the same exact way, unless I absolutely love what I did. But there's always more things that we can add or change or just tweak or, you know, just kind of just feeling like it needs something different, right? So I'm playing around with some ideas, guys. I hope you don't get too discouraged thinking that, you know, you're seeing this project and, you know, we're not doing it 100% the same way. Just know that I do have the step outs here for you. I put a couple here for you how I built this up. And we're going to do it fairly similar, okay? We're definitely still going to play with our flowers with the palette knife. And then we might opt out on the stencil. I played around a little bit more with the silver colors, and definitely we can play with them with more gold colors and more coppers, or, you know, you can paint more heavier on these flowers. There's so many options that we can do and play around with these palette knife styles. Hopefully you guys seen on my YouTube that I do have the denim 3D flower that I did before. That was applied with a brush technique, okay? And then also we've used some different pastes in stencils, like the teddy bear collection that we played around with as well. We played around with textured backgrounds. And then, so this one I want to do a little bit differently. We're definitely going to be playing around with different palette knives, right? There's different plastic ones are fine. I actually like some of the plastic ones better. They have a little bit more of a softer round on them, so you can definitely get some different looks depending on the shape that you get. Okay, so definitely play around with your palette knives. Try different shapes. There is different ones that are, like, this is very similar, this palette knife, but one's very flat and one has that little extra curve in it. So the difference between these is one is more of a painting knife. So you'll be able to sculpt and work with it a little bit, and your hand won't touch your canvas. Okay, so when you're working with a very flat palette knife, definitely when you go to push down, there's more chance of you scratching or hitting with your fingers at the bottom, right? You have to bend more, and then maybe you won't get that same pressure. So this allows you to be a little bit more flatter when you push down. This is definitely going to scoop out stuff. It's not going to have that same flatness to it, right? You'll have to really push on it, and then you may squish your paste in different directions that you want to, just because of that little bit of angle will give it a little bit more softer pressure. Okay, and so this one's very similar, just a little bit smaller. So definitely if you're trying to get into some smaller areas or make a smaller petal, then you might want to switch back and forth. Okay. So generally I use this flat one for mixing. Okay, so I don't usually do a lot of painting with the flat ones, but it's definitely good for scooping out your color, mixing your paint colors in with them, or whatever you want to do with these pastes. Okay, it's so much fun. You know, when you do something the second time, it usually comes out a lot better than the first time. Even myself, guys, I've been playing around with different modeling pastes in different ways for a few years on and off, and playing around with Donna's paste now. This time around, we are got to choose from. We have the modeling paste and the light and fluffy, and definitely you can feel a big weight difference. If you guys have never played with Donna's versions, she's dealing with a TCW company here, the craftersworkshop.com, and definitely there's some benefits. If you guys hadn't seen, I played around on a background already with another project just with the background, but definitely wanted to play around a little bit more with a palette knife style. Alright, just like I said, I'm sure that every time you do something like this, even if you repeat the process, it's always going to look slightly different every time you do it. Okay, so for this one, I definitely want to play around with the molding paste here a little bit more with you guys. And I want to put it on with the heavier stuff for the background. And definitely when you're doing the modeling paste, stuff like this, it's definitely better to do it on a canvas board as opposed to a wrapped canvas because of the flexibility and bounce. Definitely, if you want to do it on those, you can, but definitely get yourself a textbook that will be that same thickness to kind of fill in that void. So when then you press down, you have something a little bit more harder up behind the canvas to press on. So like I said, I would just want to do a very, very light skim coat of this heavier paste. And you can even take a blow dryer to it and definitely, you know, speed up the process a little bit when it's thin like this. Right, so we just want to kind of put a little bit of movement, just a very thin skim coat, and we'll play around with a couple different ways of playing around with this project here. And so definitely I think it needs that little bit more texture to go with the flowers. And so I'm not even covering the whole canvas, guys. I'm just kind of skimping it on. There's going to be areas that are going to be, you're going to see the canvas texture a little bit more. And other areas you don't. Right, so just kind of like spreading it out a little bit here and there. So I can have some nice movements. All blowing, you know, if the wind is blowing, then definitely we're all going sort of the same way. So I'm just bringing some of that over. Squeegee it really on a 45 degree or 90 degree, more straight up and down to really thin out that to thin out the paste. Okay, so when you want to lay it on thick, you're going to put it on very flat, and then it'll stay on a lot thicker for you. Okay, so I want to play around and do some different looks here in this background. And I'll have some fun with this project here. There's not a lot of complicated elements. It's just that it's just the process of waiting for paste to dry that we need to do. Add a little bit more here. And try to bring it over into this corner here a little bit so that it flows a little bit off the canvas here too. See that texture? Just kind of spreading it out nice and thin. A little bit skimpy, skippity, right? So you can see those movements. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see the raised areas. Okay. And then what I want to do a little bit differently with you guys is try to get some different movement marks in here while this is wet. So what we're going to do is going to take a big 3/4 brush and we're going to dampen it. And then you're going to wipe it out on a towel, so just get rid of most of that moisture, and then chisel, squish your brush so you get that nice chisel edge. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of brush into this paste here a little bit. Okay, I'm going to wipe off the paste excess off of my brush. You just use your fingers. Okay, and I'm just doing like a very crisscrossy kind of flow, and then I want to put some depth, right? It's almost like some reverse texture in there. Okay, so we have a nice long leaf over here, and then we can put another one up here. Right, so we're really pushing on that paste with the brush. Now my brush is starting to get a little bit too dirty. Definitely we're going to rinse it out with water, wipe it out on a towel. Okay. And we'll add another leaf there. If you feel like you would need a little bit more paste, you could definitely pick some up. And add that little bit of extra there. I was a little bit skimpy on the edge. Okay. And then we're going to pull another leaf down in that direction. Okay. And then we'll build our flowers and leaves that we paint with more texture, a little bit raised, right? So we have, these ones are actually a little bit more recessed into the canvas. And then we'll have some that are going to be a little bit more raised. And we'll see how this goes, how you like it. You can always add more paste to these leaves here as well and build them up a little bit more. If you're liking the way they're set into the background, then we can definitely leave them. Okay, so we're just going to let this dry and take a blow dryer to it. I have some a little bit of raised areas here. Yeah, that'll be fine. Alright, so to start the background, we do a little bit of glazing and layering. We do add a little bit more later, okay, but we have to start somewhere with getting some colors introduced. So I used a little bit of camel and Pablo. A little bit. And then I used ink spot or cobalt. Once you start mixing a little bit of black into your cobalt, that'll darken things a little bit too. Alright, so a little bit of licorice. And also a little bit of citrus green. So we're going to play around with the tones as they change. Similar style, right? Just changing it up a little bit to give you guys more options. Dampen our painter sponge and then squish it in a towel. Make sure that you get most of that moisture out. Right? A lot of people are complaining they're not getting enough coverage, and it's usually because they have too much water in their sponge. So you definitely need it to be damp, but not wet, okay? So we're going to start off with a little bit of camel, and then we're going to come over and multi-load a little bit of citrus green. Okay, and then we're going to start taking our canvas. I'll put this one away. We're going to start swooping our canvas from the top to the bottom. Okay, so you're just kind of adding streaky kind of movements. You're kind of merging that green and camel, soft camel color into each other, but streaky. Don't over mix, guys. You see how I'm just moving down a little bit at a time. Okay, adding some of the colors, and we're going to go over this again. And you want to kind of work a little bit quickly so that way you'll be able to get those colors moving a little bit more. If you tend to need a little bit more moisture and movement to get the slip and sliding motion going on, you definitely can add a little bit of floating medium or even blending gel, guys. A little bit of blending gel will give you a little bit more open time. Okay, so I'm just going to pop a little bit over there. It's not open yet. Okay, careful, this is very, very runny. So not to pour too fast because it's a little bit different than the floating medium. Okay, so I'm not going to put in there any yet, but if I do need a little bit more moisture, things are getting a little bit sticky, then definitely I'm just going to dampen just a little bit. So over onto the green side, I'm going to come over and pick up a little bit of my blue now. Right? And then I'm slowly going to merge some blue strokes in there. And like I said, you can have these little wispy areas. No problem. And then we're going to play around with some different movements, a little bit more camel, right? We'll soften things. Right. And then as I keep moving down, I'm adding a little bit more stronger blues. So you get those little bit more tealy looks. You're going to push a little bit more into that texture. Make sure that it's getting right into that canvas and into the paint. Okay, so you're going to go right across some of these stems that you created. And it's feeling a little bit dry, guys, a little bit sticky. Sorry, I'm getting this coverage. Okay. Then I'm going to come over on where I had the camel. I still want a little bit of camel, but I want to touch a little tiny bit of that Pablo now. Okay, so I'm going to turn my canvas so that my green is still coming over my blues. Right, got that blue. We're going to add some more blues and blacks and darker colors in there for sure. But we definitely want to start coming into this other third of the corners now. And as we're pushing down, we're starting to get more of that khaki green kind of Pablo mix, right? A little bit softer when it's mixed with it, right? Oh, we're going to definitely add more paint, guys, okay? So definitely don't worry about the coverage. Okay, keep adding a little tiny bit of blue, a little bit of that stronger Pablo now. Okay, whatever blue starts to come out here and there, doesn't matter. I want to add lots of movement. Okay, just try not to mix too much of the blue and the Pablo together because then you'll get more brown tones, right? So you're trying to keep those blues and greens a little bit separate, right? Pushing on it and then go right underneath it so that you're not merging those two colors too much. Okay, so I want to pick up a little bit more of that camel now. I want to lighten things up a little bit more as we come out. And you can start still kind of put in a little bit of that blue, or now it should be looking a little bit more like an aqua, right? That little bit of green that's still in there. You still put a little bit of that back in there too. Alright, so we're going to have little streaks of all kinds of different colors coming through. A little bit more of that Pablo. So just try to keep all your oranges, your light colors, you know, your camel and your Pablo on this side, and then your greens and your blues over onto this side. Okay. So we want a little bit more greens. We can definitely tip over onto our sponge and add more colors. Okay. So now we're going to work out. We need a little bit more of that camel. And play around with the camels. And if you don't push very hard, you're just picking up the paint on the outside of the sponge. Don't push too hard, guys, because what happens is it ends up going really deep into the sponge, and you never get that paint on your canvas. You know, it just gets more dirty and muddy on your hands, right? So definitely just try to pick up that colors very, very gently, guys. You're just kind of picking it up very softly. You're not pushing hard, you're just picking it up. Okay, then that way you're picking it up on the edge and it doesn't go too deep into that sponge. Okay, so now I can kind of go over my areas, pick up a little bit more of that green, come over my blue areas again, right? So you're wet on wet, right? You really want to have your canvas slipping. Right, I haven't even bothered with my mediums yet, but I do definitely see some white spots still here, right, where my texture is. So I definitely want to maybe add just a little bit of moisture, a little bit of blending gel, so that it'll go in there a little bit deeper. I want that blue kind of darker areas right in this area. Adding a little bit more of that camel. Darker, I'm using the ink spot blue. It's just a smidgen darker, guys. It does make a bit of a difference. Again, I'm just going to get that swoopiness until you're happy with it. Alright, we don't want to add any black just quite yet. Okay, so I want to come back over into my camel here and my green. Alright, because I want to add a little bit more movement like Donna did. Okay, so we're swooping into our green area. I want to add a little bit of swipes of different areas of maybe different movements of on top of it, right? So you're just kind of adding a little bit of that. Those colors there. Alright, so again, I'm just kind of going with the wind tones and changing things up a little bit. So as it's in there, you still got some swoops going on the angle. Now these are like lighter swoops that you're just going to kind of go off into a different direction. And everything's going to come out of this, oops, one corner here. So I messed up that area a little bit, so I just want to go over and pick up some light camel here. Re-pick up that green and citrus again. Try to float this again back over into this area. Okay. I like when I mess up for you guys, because then I can show you how to get out of it. Okay, so we went back over it, covered it again. Now it's wet. And now we want to add some of these little just movements of streaks. Okay, so maybe this will maybe look like some foliage that was really far away. Okay, so I'm trying to kind of like just add some wisps, maybe in the motion of the leaves that you put. Alright, so they're just kind of play with it, guys. Have fun with it. But try to be on top of the wisps after. Try not to overmix. So then that way you're getting those layers kind of sitting on top of each other. I'm just coming right off the edge of that canvas there. and then swooping in a different direction. Get some of that blue back in there. Almost like a flower bouquet almost. Alright, so now I want to go out and pick up the black, but I just want to pick up a tiny little bit of that floating medium or blending gel, and I'm going to come over and pick up the black and some blue, work that in a little bit, because we don't really want it dark, dark, dark black. We just want it to be a dark, dark, dark blue. Okay, so again, we're just kind of trying to be loose with the sponge now, and try to add some soft swoops in here. Bump it up a little bit. Alright. Still have some white patches in there. So we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to add to it, so then that way we can glaze over it now and add some more layers to it. Especially this area here on the outside. Your flower is going to be right here, so you're not going to see a lot of the mess right here, so you don't have to worry there too much, but you definitely want this swoopiness to come out on the outsides where you're, so you're just kind of merging a very, very soft black in there. And the rest we'll put on with our sponges. Alright, so if you want this to dry just a little bit more, you can always put this aside. And then if you're not feeling confident about these pastes yet, definitely I would use the molding paste for backgrounds and getting that heavier texture on the background. And then when I'm molding and I want to mix with paint, or if I want to do a textured flower like we're going to do today, I want to play around with the light and fluffy. Definitely play with both of them. Maybe you like one more than the other, but definitely this does add some weight to your canvas as well. So that's why basically I choose this one. And to me, they both play around with, you know, it's very, very same way. The thickness and the texture is definitely very, very similar. It's just that the lightness, it's very, very light to the weight that you're feeling. All right. So the first thing we want to do is pull out a little bit of this paste onto a plate, nice clean plate, so it stays nice and white. It doesn't really matter, we're going to paint on top of it anyways, but definitely take out what you think you're going to need. You can always pull out more, right, but it does start to get thick, and you know, you do have some good working time, but you definitely don't want your jar to get thick on you. And then what I suggest you do is play around a little bit with your different knives, right? You're going to pick up you're going to leave it nice and high, right? So that you can scoop off little bits off the edge. So you're going to just come in just like you're taking a little bit of butter, and you're going to back load your palette knife. Okay, so if you need to fix it, you just push it all over and then come over, cut it a little piece off, and then pick up your paste. Right? So the first thing we're going to do is basically what you're going to do is you're going to draw out a flower shape, right? We're going to do the same thing on our canvas. We're going to give it 5 nice big petals. We could practice on a piece of vinyl or maybe one of the plastic protector sheets or Donna's sleeves. All right, so the nice thing about this is if we're quick, you can just do a couple petals. You don't have to do all the practice on here. If you just want to do a little tiny bit of a practice, you definitely can do that. So all I did was lay that paste over to unload it so that it has a nice high ridge, and we're going to work our way over off the edge into the middle of the petal. Okay, so I'm going to pull over a little bit more paste, and I'm going to come over and I'm going to push onto the other side so it squishes that edge, and then flatten that palette knife straight down. Keep picking up scoops of paste. Okay, so now when we're starting to build the top layer, what we want to do is we're going to lay it down, but we're going to give it a little bit of a push. You're not pushing all the way through, because if you push all the way through, you're going to see the black. Okay, so we just want to kind of push gently so that it leaves the ridged edge at the top. Give it a little bit of a jiggle, and then pull that down towards the center. Okay. Again, we're trying to pick up more at the tip of that palette knife, right? So we don't need too much over here. We need it loaded at least halfway through the top area. Right? Again, adding another little petal. Right? A little bit of a jiggle to kind of soften the round at the top, and then a gentle pull. Okay, so as I'm coming through the center here, you can definitely play around with this a little bit more, you know, pulling more streaks, nice and gentle. But definitely get the majority of your petal done first. Okay, so a little bit of a wiggle, pull, and then drag down. Okay, so you can kind of smooth the center here, but you don't want to touch your nice edge that you created. Okay, over here, I want to maybe push a little bit on the left side a little bit more, so I'm shoving more of the thickness over to one side. Okay, and then you're just going to pull. Okay, so again, you can always play around with your little streaks here, kind of smooth them out. If you feel like you want to add more thickness to an area, definitely you can add a little bit more. Right, you want to change the shape of the petal, make them a little bit bigger. And always add a little bit more to it. Right. And then also another thing, I'm not going to carry on too much more because you're going to see me do it on the canvas. But if you feel like you wanted to pull in your petal a little bit more, you have a little bit of too much product somewhere you don't like, just dampen your sponge with a wet water, and then you can always pull and erase a little bit more of that petal, right? If you want to take some away to clean it off, maybe you want to add a little bit more to the edge here, right? So that we can get a really nice edge lifted up around those petals. Okay, and then we're going to pull that all into the middle, and then we'll usually end up with something here that we can play with, and then we'll add some more texture for our center. Okay, so it's basically the same way that we're going to do our design. And like I said, right now you don't want to leave this to dry, so what we can do is squeegee that back off, put it back on our plate, or back right into your jar right away quickly if you just want to sit and practice for a while. Definitely play around, but try to preserve your paste so then that way you can use it again. Okay, this little lump here, again, every once in a while move it around so that you're keeping it fresh. Okay, because the edges, the outside layer might start to get a little thick. And try to only pull out what you need, right, for each flower, and then just try to pull out a little bit more as you're working. It really depends on how fast you're working. Okay, so you want to kind of pull out only as you feel like you can work. Alright, so then when you're finished with your practice, you can just take a damp towel and then wipe off your plastic. I showed you guys these in one of my painting hacks on what to practice on. I gave you a bunch of different options to play with. Okay, so now that we have a little understanding of how we're going to lay that paste down, we definitely can grab our chalk again and see where we want to place that flower. Right, so we're going to put one petal over here, and then one petal over here, and one over here. See how you like it. Maybe we'll pull this down a little bit more actually. Okay, so I'm going to pull that flower a little bit lower because I'm not going to use a stencil this time, guys. I'm trying to do a little bit more of a texture for you, a different background. And you can definitely put a stencil still in there if you want somewhere. Okay, so this is already kind of looking like a stem coming out. And then we're going to put our little bud here, right? And then there is another flower that comes up. We'll definitely have to kind of downsize this. Make this a little bit smaller. Alright, so it's about the size of my hand. And then we have one that's going to come down. Half flower. Over on this way. You can always make things a little bit bigger, but it's hard to make things smaller. Just my little bud over here. And then we can always play around with some more shadow leaves now too, and add a little bit more look to it. Okay, so our other leaf is kind of coming off over here. You can maybe put another little shadow leaf over here. Right? We can play around with our colors, but it's going to be a very loose feel and not accurate and very diminished, you know, in the background. Okay. So definitely we're going to play around with our stem work and stuff like that, but we're going to get the paste on first. We're going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow when we come back, we can always add a little bit more color on top of it once it's dry. Okay, so if you want to work over on the top area here first, work your way down, then that way you're not kind of leaning into your flower. We can always try and do that little small one first. Okay, so we're going to start off with a good little mount, and we're going to come over to the edge and pull into our little bud. Okay. It's too gloppy, you know, I'll put it back down and then grab it again, so then that way I'm happy with how much is being laid down. Okay, so I want to add a little bit more of a round bud over on the side and pull. Very soft touches. If you need to move it around a little bit, push it over so it's nice and thick here at the edge, and then soften it down. Just kind of smoothing these four areas. Then also what I want to do is add a little bit more of a bum. Right, so we want to add some thickness here at the base here. Turning our canvas around. And I'm going to pull up in the other direction. just to kind of smooth that up around and get that nice and thick. Now you can kind of pull down again. And have a nice raised flower area. Again, want to fix anything, you can always go and erase, clean up your line a little bit. So again, clean off your palette if you're getting too much going up on top, right? You want to make sure that your palette knife is picking up nice and clean and only at the bottom. So we're going to start up, over on the edge. Pulling down. Once you get the hang of it, you start to get a little quicker and feel more confident in the results. You know, really the less you play with it, the better. Alright, just try to practice a little bit. So pulling, squeezing that out to the side and then smoothing it in. Fingers always work great too. Okay, so pull that. Trying to give my flower a little bit more space this time in between the petals. Okay, dropping down that little ball, kind of playing, pressing it out, and then swooping towards the center. So now that we know, trying to grab the side where it's a little bit long so that I can grab a nice long area. A little bit further away. It's almost like icing a cupcake. A little bit of a peek there. And you can definitely color your paste if you wanted to too. And do it this way as well with your colored paste. Alright. But you definitely get different colors coming through. Right? And sometimes with the paste being white, you'll lose some of the intensity of the color. You'll get a softer pastel look as well. So this way, if we color paint on top of it, you'll definitely get a lot more stronger color. Pulling that over to the side. I'm just going to pull in this flower petal into a little bit more space. And whatever chalk is still on your canvas, guys, don't worry. It will disappear as soon as we are nice and dry. You can take a damp brush and you'll be able to erase it. But the painting that we're going to be doing on top of it is going to also erase things. Okay, so just a guideline, the chalk. Alright. Kind of making a softer edge. And then now I want to come in and pull some smoother strokes. You can always add a little bit more edge. Right, you're putting it down so you can kind of tap it so that you're unloading the spatula, and then just very lightly smooth off that edge. So now we got an area in the middle. We're going to make more like a center here. Right. And it's good that we have some original areas down at the bottom of the canvas here, because those are just going to add more depth to it when you start adding the color to it. Okay, so we're trying to make a little bit of a center here, circle that's raised. Okay, trying to make it a little bit thick. And this is why we have to wait for it to dry, guys. We're putting this on definitely a little thicker than normal. Okay, so just trying to get that thickness up. And then I'm going to go and take my liner brush and we're going to start picking up tiny little balls of paste off the edge of your liner brush. Okay, and then just kind of lay them, they'll stick to the wet paste so that you have some little bit of raised areas. For your center. The more I play with this stuff, guys, the more ideas I come up with. I really swear it's just a process of playing, getting to know it, seeing what you can do with it. And I've done so many different sculpting and played with clays and more 3D elements for sure. So now I'm just trying to kind of incorporate some of those ideas. Right, so picking up little balls of paste, swirl it down, right, to let go, so that it kind of stays in a little ball. And just keep picking it up just with the tip of your liner brush. And I do like the Hurl Pro brushes there that have the brown handles. They are a little stiffer, so they will be a little bit better for sculpting, picking stuff up. A little bit too big of a spot there off the edge. Just try to make that a little bit smaller. And we have some different sizes. Softening the edge here a little bit. around the edges. Just kind of blend that into the background a bit more. So right here is going to be a little bit of a soft edge here. All right, but you build it up first and then just soften the edge down. So then we're going to build one more. A little bit bigger. Okay, so we have one petal coming over to the side here. Try to be a little bit more flat to get those ridges in between each petal. Trying to have a little different technique with all of them. So here I'm making a middle petal. I'm going to push on this side, push on this side. Alright, so that way you're creating that petal. Just keep playing with it until you're happy with that edge. All right, once you're happy with the shape of the edge, then you can push down. All right, using the point of my palette knife so I can get right up on the edge to make this a little bit skinnier. Just loosely putting my lid on. And then I'm going to actually try a little bit of a separated petal here. Over to the side. Clean that up, bring that all to a point. Keep wiping the brush. And just smooth this one in. To the canvas. Let's see how this looks when you put it back upside down. Yeah, it kind of looks like there's a flower flipping right over there. Yeah. Okay. Smooth this one down a little bit too. Yeah. Take a look at our flowers, see how you feel about them. Always add just that little bit more. Oh no! I slipped. Yeah, it's starting to get thick. I'm gonna squeegee this off. And try again. Just mix that in there so it kind of moistens it up a little bit. And then I grab a damp towel. So if you're quick and you don't like it, you can always wipe it off, guys. A little bit rough there, and I knocked some paint off, but that's okay. We'll be able to fix that. Alright, so where was that guy again? There's a leaf over here. We can try and get right on top of that paint that's missing. Now I'm trying to keep my hand up so I'm not hitting this guy. And you try not to overcomplicate it, guys. Alright, just try to have fun with it. You can always add more petals. The illusion of petals, layered petals. Put a little bit over to the side. And I'll clean that up a little bit. Pull that in a little bit. The other project I was doing was all with brushes, which you could always do. You could always add more paste, but you're going to see more brush strokes. Okay, so we want the palette knife look. Grab a little smaller one this time. So you can always keep adding. A little bit over to the bottom here. Trying to add more so it'll come like a little bit of a bottom of the bell. Yeah, that's good. That'll be fine to add a little bit of a point too. And I'm just kind of pushing on it. Almost looks like little. When that dries and you put paint in there, that'll kind of look like it's the bottom of the flower there. Oops, why did I touch that one? And once this is dry too, guys, you can go and add more to it too if you really want to add more of a raised area. This stuff is actually amazing. Like, I played around with a bunch of different pastes in my time, and I've never been able to get any paste to come up as thick as this one. So this is why I really got excited to try this, because I really wanted to play with it. But this was my first attempt at it, and so hopefully this one will turn out a lot nicer. Right, so I see how my petals were a little too squished together. So I'll use this as an example of what not to do. Alright, and then I just made this way too big too. If you look, it's a little bit more daintier now. Alright. So, like I said to you guys all the time, every time you do something twice, it's always going to be better. You're going to look at things and go, what don't I like about it? And then what could I do to change it, to fix it? Alright, so I also put these two extra little raised leaf in there as well. Okay, so we can definitely still pop up one of those over there, and then definitely we want to have a little bit more paste. Alright, a little bit at a time, guys. Keep this stuff nice and moist, because it's already starting to get a little thick there. Okay, so for these guys, what I did, alright, pushing my paste right over so I can cut off a scoop. And for this one, I wanted to pull up. Alright, so we're going to start at the bottom of the leaf, and we're going to start pulling a nice long, let you stay down there. Alright, I'm going to start gently putting it up and then pulling that leaf. Oops, this one. Oh, I think I used the bigger one. Yeah, this one was a little skinny, that's why. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit skinnier on the edge. Alright, so we're going to pull that leaf up, and then we're definitely going to add to it. Okay, so I'm pulling this up onto one side, and then to our point. Now I don't want to make this too wide, so I'm just coming right on top of my paste, and I'm going to add that edge. Alright, try to get behind it so you're pulling it to point. And I just want to smooth this edge. Just a little bit of water on my brush. Pull that to the point. And you can always smooth things up a little bit with your brush too. And it's giving that a little bit different look for the leaves. I got too much paste down here and not enough over here. A little bit too raised. And just gently knock it down. You want the edge to be nice and thick up here. There we go. I was getting all confused here. Pull it down this way. just barely touching the edge. Okay. And then what we want to do is use our chisel edge of our brush to add that vein in there. And then I'm going to put another one up over here. Squish on it so you get that thickness at the edge. Sometimes I have too much paste in one way. I want to bring it down, right? So you got to play with it and maneuver it a little bit. Pull my point down here. And even if you flatten this out, we can always add more paint on top of it. Just a little bit of a thick edge there. Here. Like I said, you can do the same thing with your leaves. You're going to pull down with your palette knife to create that texture. Down the middle, off to the side a couple of times. And then we're going to pull our stem through. Add a little bit more of a point to it. Oh. Now we can let that dry, and we're going to add more to it tomorrow. Right, because it's so thick. Yes, you could probably blow dry it and get the surface dry, but if you go and press on it too hard, you'll see that maybe it's not 100% dry, and you'll end up squishing it. So try not to push it too much. Like I shoved my sweater in that one. And let it dry. Okay, I better stop fussing before I wreck this flower again. There we go, I'm just trying to give it that little smoother. When it starts to dry, then it gets cakey a little bit, so that's why you gotta kind of work a little bit quick. You can always wake it up with a tiny little bit of water. I just want to smooth this area down here. Okay. Okay guys, when you're cleaning off these palette knives, definitely make sure you're putting them in water when you're done with them, but I always wipe them out on an old rag. If you still have little bits of hard paste on it, then try to scrape it off with another palette knife. Alright, take another palette knife and just scrape off all the extra hard bits. It'll all come off very easy off of your palette knives, and then you can just slide this right into the garbage. Alright, so if we have too much of wall putty or paint or anything going down our sinks, a lot of times you will, it'll start to harden in your pipes. You'll have a hard time. So definitely make sure that you're wiping off the excess on a paper towel, and then, or just let them sit there and get dry. And like I said, once they're dry, you can easily scrape it all off the palette knife. Alright, and then they'll be good to go to use again. I'm definitely going to go and take a plunge on this one, and I'm going to experiment a little bit. So I'm going to grab some floating medium and a little bit of this ink spot, and because my ink spot is a little bit thick, I wanted to show you guys that I was doing a bit of a watercolor effect on here, and it just was too translucent. Alright, so I'm going to dampen my brush here, it's a dry brush, with some floating medium, and come over and pick up some of this paint. And I still like the silver, you know. You know, there's so many choices when it comes to our metallics, right? We even have pinks and greens and purples and all kinds of different colors that we can play with. And you know, or just your jewel tones as your silvers and golds and coppers, right? So there's so many fun metallics you can play with, and it just depends on what's your favorites, what's going to match your home too is a big thing of it. So I'm just kind of trying to be careful not to make a mess for my background, and I want to give these flowers a little bit more solid coverage. So I added a lot more floating medium in there and played with a real watery effect. So again, the more floating medium you get in your paint, you're gonna have different looks, right? A little bit more translucent. You can definitely play around with different heavinesses. Okay, so this is not 100% coverage. This is probably 80% color, just very little bit of floating medium, and this is probably like 80% floating medium, or maybe 75, 60. You know, again, when I first did it, it was probably like 90% floating medium. It was just a very subtle wash. So, like I said, I want this to be a little bit more richer and darker. Right? So I'm just kind of smudging out anything that lands on my canvas. And I want to do a lot more shading around the back side of my flower as well. So if a little bit gets over there, that's okay. I'm just trying to smudge out any obvious heavy spots. And I might even change the pink tone here too. I definitely made this a little bit cool looking. Again, I was inspired by Donna's, right? And I was trying to go with what she was doing, and but she did it with paints and different look. With all this texture that we can take advantage of, there's more potential. That's all I'm saying. It's not that I didn't like that design. If I was doing it with just paint, I would definitely do it again and copy her. But with all this texture, it just has so much potential. Right, and like I said, you guys can pick your favorite colors to do these similar techniques with the washes in the back. If you do like the cooler tones, we are in the fall season right now. You know, so people are inspired by more fall colors right now. And definitely different styles and looks. And so I'm going to get these colored. And oh my god, like I've already played with so many different multimedia pieces with gold nuggeting, and you know, it's just so much fun, guys, to play with different elements and have multimedia. I try to merge some one-stroke styles. And if you guys know Donna, guys, like I'm taking a redo cert right now for furniture restoration, stuff like that. Redo them, make them more modern, shabby chic, all these different styles. And there's so many different faux finishes that Donna teaches as well. Not only her beautiful roses, right? So definitely we got to keep thinking outside that box a little bit. And you know, trying to think about what we want to do. And again, I'm looking at all my colors in the background I want to merge. And I've got this nice dark blue, but I'm almost thinking that I might want to merge some teal. Right? I'm not even cleaning my brush, guys. I'm going to just go right into that teal. And I want to start having a little bit of that blue coming in with the teal too. So whatever happens, I'm trying not to over blend it, and I might even pick up a little bit of both colors in there just to kind of change things up a little bit too. Right? Have those blues and a little bit of teals. And you can even have a damp brush if you want to erase. Okay. A little bit more floating medium in my brush. Just so it slides a little bit more, it's not so thick. And you gotta get around the edges, so I'm not even worrying about being neat, right? Because I want to get around those edges so there are no white spots there. And then I'm just smudging with my fingers. Right, so this is gonna be a bit of a shadow already starting. Right, just from kind of erasing with your fingers. Right. And then we'll let this dry, and then we'll do some dry brushing on here that will definitely make it pop. Oops, I keep wiping off, rubbing too hard. Okay, so let's keep going on with this style here for our flowers. I'm trying to put some more of that base, and you can see how the blue goes over the white, even with, you know, I might have done a little bit of white and black multi-loading when I was doing the painting that I'm going to show you guys in the last steps. So definitely like a stain, you're still going to see those colors underneath. A little bit of floating medium. You don't have 100% coverage. And then if we do a little bit of floating around the edges too later, if there's any white spots, you can probably get them there too. I just don't want to make a big mess on my outside areas here. And try to smooth it out so there's no big globs of paint all stuck in your ridges. Yeah, that's looking better. So then I'm going to wipe this out, and actually I'm going to put a little bit of citrus now. I'm not wiping, I'm not watering down my brush. I'm just wiping down the excess off my brush. Right, again, because I don't want it waterlogged. Right, I want to have control over here in my paint. So now I want to pick up a little bit of the teal in the citrus here. Put some color on my leaves here. A little bit stronger. So still on the cool side of the warm colors. And I'm not doing any particular one-stroke techniques really. I'm just kind of letting it kind of have some different areas. That's all really. That's a little bit better. Okay, because I put so much silver on my stencil here, I still gotta stay with those cooler tones. Unless I go over my stencil again and I change the color of my metallic, you know, this is what's gonna stop me now, is because I have some base of my background here that is permanent, that's not gonna go anywhere. So I definitely have to still play with it and enhance it and keep going a little bit more. Alright, so now that we have that, now I need a little bit of water. Because I want to side load, right? We're going to get the colors all out nice. And then I'm also going to add a tiny bit of licorice. And then our floating medium, and first I'm going to go into the blues. Right, grab a little bit of color on the edge. If you don't have the ink spot, you can definitely use cobalt, and then maybe slide in a little bit of Parisian blue if you have it to get the little darker tones, and then change into black, just very, very subtle. Right, so once I start putting some black in here, then definitely it's going to deepen things too, right? So you still want to have those obvious blue areas. You don't want it to be too dark. And the cobalt or the ink spot is going to help. Right, so I want to be able to use the floating medium so I can do a nice fade out. Right, now big heavy paint. Just kind of shadowing a little bit more with the blues right now. Like I said, if you got any white areas, this will help too to give it a little darker. Area here. And then I want to go into the teals as well to do some shading. Just subtly into those teal areas to just deepen those areas a little bit more. Right? But up here there's a lot more of your Pablo, right? So we just want this very, very, very light. Lots of floating medium, guys, just to kind of add a little glaze over it. Right, a lot more floating medium when you want it to just softly glaze. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit more blue because it needs a little bit more contrast. Bluey, teal. And go right over with some floating medium, right over your stencil, guys. You can see that it's not even touching the color here. It's just adding that little bit more of a stain look, feel. So I want the stems to be more bluish, right? A little bit more warmer. And going right over those white and black strokes. You see how that's changing the color here a little bit? Make it a little bit more tealy looking. Lots of floating medium on this side because it's so light. And go over and pick the blue up. Just kind of going back and forth with the two colors. Okay. And then we can pick up just the tiniest amount of black. Oops. I'm working on a dirty plate here, so this is dry black. Okay, and then again, you can deepen some areas just a little bit more with your shading on the undersides here a little bit. A little bit of tealy black. More floating medium. And this will help pop these flowers out a little bit more too. Very, very subtle with the black, so hopefully you still see some blue coming through. Some areas can be definitely a little bit darker. Now I want to pick up a lot of floating medium, guys, and I want to add some more of those illusions of shadow leaves in this one. Right, that's way too black. I want to pick up some teal. Water that down a little bit more. Lots more floating medium. Or even water, guys. Just very the illusion of. Right? And if you're fast and you don't like something, definitely you can erase it out. Right, so remember when we were doing the other background, it was, your background was wet. So it's definitely going to not merge the same way if you do it. I'm just kind of going over this very, very lightly just to kind of blur it out and maybe add a little bit more teal tone. Lots of floating medium. Add some depth of darkness in there. I didn't want to put it too black, but there we go. Just kind of dirty that stroke up a little bit. I just feel it, play with it. Hope you guys are starting to loosen up a little bit more with projects, and that's why I like to introduce you to stuff like this. It's just a little bit different, you know, outside our comfort zone, and I'm sure it's going to look wonderful. Okay, and then I want to change this center here a little different. I'm going to put black. I want to make this actually dark. Okay, so you have just even a little bit of water. There's a lot of bumps in here, right? And if you put very watery black in the center, right, just kind of smudge it in there. Then if you take a rag, and it'll remove the excess off the edges of your raised areas. And so I do want to kind of change this pink tone in here, so I do have to give a little bit more coverage right in this very center here. But along the edges, this is where I wanted it to be a little bit faded out. I put pink and yellow in here before, so we're going to change this a little bit more. Just to add a little bit more silver tones. You can see how if there was a little bit of watery floating medium, you're still going to get that little bit of catches in the ridges, and it's going to still be a little bit darker. Okay. So that's what I want to do with this black, is really water it down. Lots of water. I want to add lots of depth onto this blue. Okay. Lots of water, guys. If your blue is dry, your black will just sit in the crevices. Right? Your blue's dry. I'm doing a watercolor effect on top of it now. Lots of water. Still want to see that blue. Now I'm feeling it, guys. I'm starting to feel it. Right? See how dark that is? Just add more water. Okay. And you can't blow dry this, guys. You have to let this dry. You really want it to do its own thing and pool. Right? You don't want it to be too wet and globby, but you definitely want to have those little darker ridges starting to happen in the deeper spots. Kind of pulled a little bit of my paint off here. Just kind of dabbing a little bit of blue back on there too. Just went sideways on it. It squeegees the water down. And like I said, we're going to be hitting all the tops of these edges back with silver again. And then we're going to do that in with the leaves as well. And we want that tone to come through. It's very dark here anyway, so yeah, I like the tones better now. It's a little bit more burnt and alright, this is how we can take advantage of the texture. Even this one, if it's feeling too light still, but it's going off into a light area, so a little bit more blue-black. A little softer. Alright, guys. Hope you're liking the new transformation. I don't know if I want to put something that way or not. Okay, because it's, like I said, we did play around with this differently. If I wanted to add more oomph now, then I gotta kind of change colors a little bit. A little bit of floating medium in there. Then I can maybe wash a little bit more coverage. There we go. You know, we definitely would have to wet an area. Get a little bit of black in my brush and hit it with the camel, and there we go. I kind of like that better. Right? And this is just right on top of the stencil, guys. It'll almost kind of make it a little softer and blend it out. Pick up a little bit of camel and blues now. Right, this is still drying, so I'm playing now. A little bit of that. Just to kind of enhance and enrichen it and soften it, blur it. Little extra bonus here. I got 2 in 1. Alright, so hopefully you guys can see how you can add to it still, alright? Maybe get a little bit of teal. A little bit of citrus greens. Just with the brush now. Back into a little bit of that camel. That's where you start getting a nicer look, is with the flow of wet on wet. I'm going to add a little bit more floating medium or water, just so I can make this a little bit more translucent. I want this to look like a shadow leaf. There, now I'm happy with those. Right, so see if your shadow leaves are too heavy. You can definitely still make a bit of a wash over it. Just as I keep going into different areas and trying to kind of match the color blends, right? I like that teal and citrus feel. A little bit more black in there too. Not too heavy, just grab some water. Translucent that color out. I'm running out of paint on my plate now here. But just trying to wake it up with water, right? You're gonna get some tones in there. Right? And then you can let this dry, and you still feel like you need a little bit more shading there. You can definitely go and pick up a little bit more darker colors. Just enough to dirty my brush. This side's okay. And always just keep adding shading. If you put too much, it's kind of hard to take it away. But you know, you can always keep adding more depth and richness to your painting. I must have hit the corner here to paint there. And see how that just kind of gives that a little bit more color with a wash. The camel has white in it, so it won't let you give it a wash the same way. But the Pablo will. That'll give you a translucent color. You can do washes with Pablo. Right, so just the colors that have no white in them will give you more of a watercolor effect. And a little bit more warmth on this side. A little bit more camel streaks. Too big of a spot there. Okay, I'm starting to like this now, believe it or not. Right. Oops, leave this alone. Now I gotta bit dirty. I need some blue to fix that. Okay, this is where my patience is hard because I have a hard time sometimes leaving things alone to let dry. Very light taps. Don't wipe too hard. Right? Because that blue paint was not set. It was dry, but it was not set. Okay. So I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to carry on with my other project. Now that I got sidetracked back over here on this one. And we'll come back and add some pop to this. I actually like the little lighter areas that are coming up here a little bit. Making them look a little bit all different. Oh my god, guys, there are so many different things that we can play around with on top of these textures. There's dragonfly glaze if you want a little bit more glittery. Definitely pearl if you want to keep with the white. There's pearls with the metallic line, the pearl line, and definitely more glitterific I can put on here, color shifts I can put on here. You know, there's so many different options to play around with. And then also the treasure golds as well, right? So those are really, really strong impact that you can still add again as another element. So sometimes we want like softer shimmers. Definitely any of the metallics will work for this, right? And then for this new second one that we're doing, I definitely want to try and do something a little bit different. So I want to play around a little bit more with like the fire opal, like real coppery or like real strong coppers. Color shift orange is not what I'm looking for. I want the color to really pop. Okay, antique copper is really nice too. So let's play with those, and I'll get out some treasure golds. Alright, and then in the treasure golds, again, we have the silver that I played around with the first original, the platinum. There's also a darker antique silver, which is really nice too. There's different shades like blue and purple that's available in this line. This one's really, really nice too, antique copper. I might just play around with both just to show you guys. And then a little lighter rose gold, which is nice for, especially for this kind of element. The very true gold, and another regular copper. Right, so there's lots of varieties, and then this is the antique gold. Again, if we want to stay on the darker side. This is like a lighter gold, Mayan gold, or Maya. And then this one has a little bit more green gold. Right, so lots and lots and lots of different options out there, guys, depending on what you have. Definitely all of these metallics will definitely give our flower a little pop in different ways. And sometimes I just need to see that color right in front of me to get the vibe of it, right? You put it on there, and again, nothing's permanent until you let it dry, right? If it just test a small little area, see if you like it. And if it doesn't give you enough pop, then definitely you can add more to it, right? So let's play around with all these different, all the dust in it. Alright, so now we're going to add some color to this one. Alright, so we need a base, and we definitely need to play around with a little different color options. Too much choices, right? I'm really glad that this has evolved and a really good option for you guys to learn a lot of different opportunities to play around with, especially when it comes to color choices and techniques, right? So hopefully you guys can see the difference in the background effect. That just came out way better, I believe, I personally feel, because of that extra little textures we did in the reverse of scraping out with the brush with that wet texture of the paste, and then playing around differently with the wet paint as it's all together as one, kind of merging in. So I was trying to kind of add those to the other one later, but it's just not going to be the same. You just don't get the same colors merging together. So this is another opportunity. Like I said, do it twice. Try not to see that you're going to get a perfect one the very first time. It's all about experiencing how color develops, right? And layering different colors on top of each other a little differently than, you know, maybe what you've done before in the past. And but definitely it adds to your knowledge bank, right, of choices. So I want to get that teal in there, and some of that green again in little spots, and our ink spots and bits of black. Lots of bottles on my table now. And brush. And guys, when you're doing stuff like this, don't bring out your best brushes, right? Hopefully you've got some brushes that have lost a chisel a little bit or gotten dry paint in it somehow, and they're just on the ends of what are you going to do with them now. This is the time that you try to bring out some of these brushes that are starting to lose their chisel a little bit. Okay, so we're going to start adding some different colors. I want to add some different rich colors into this time. Okay, and you can even just paint right on that background wherever little pops of it come through. And I do want to kind of have a little bit of a two-tone effect. So I'm just going around all of the middle of it. Alright, and we can cover our center to give it a little bit of orangey look. And whenever you're painting anything rough like wood or, you know, even this textured stuff, you know, you're really playing around with a lot of bumpy stuff that may be rough. And I'll bring that out a little bit more in the middle. Wipe off my brush, and then I'm going to go into that camo. Okay, so it's a little bit dirty now. It's starting to pick up some of that Pablo. I'm just going to get another brush, and then I can kind of erase if I get anything on my background. Okay. And you'll have to look at these guys all the way in different directions, because it's amazing how much doesn't get around the edges here. And I want to make sure that it gets right around there. I'm going to just do these top ones here for now. Alright, I don't care that it's the canvas. And take a look down the top view, right? So you're going to see little bits of, maybe it's not covered 100%. I noticed on my other one after that was happening. Okay, so we're going to get that on there, and then grab another brush and then just kind of rinse the paint away. keep wiping it. Clean your brush every once in a while. Try not to have it too wet. Keep dabbing it on my towel. Take your time. I do things sometimes quick just because of the recording, and I think you guys are sitting watching getting bored. So sometimes we just move a little too fast. There's a little bit of chalk there still left over on that one. Right. There we go. See, as you keep playing, you learn different things, right? The first time you do it, you experience some issues that you might have to deal with and get through. And then the second time you do it, it just seems to always go faster, and you feel more confident, and it'll turn out better because then you start really enjoying the process. Then you get a little bit more brave, and then you start to try new things. So, just want to make sure I get all the edges here. Too wet, just keep using your brush as a sponge, and you dry out that brush, and then just wipe it again, and it'll start pulling up all that water. Okay, so now that we have the edges all good, I'm just going to multi-load my brush here a little bit, and what I want to do is just kind of merge these two colors, pick up a little bit of Pablo, and just kind of soften the line. So a little bit of both colors, quick dip on your plate just to kind of help blend a little bit, and then a zigzaggy kind of softness through the middle here. Right, so we are incorporating a little bit of one stroke here. Right. This one's a little bit too orangey, that's okay, I can add a little bit more to it. It's almost dry brushing it on there. You still maybe see little bits of that orange in there too. What do you think of that, guys? A little bit different? Use the light color too, to kind of just very lightly graze whatever's left on your brush. You always go and glaze a little bit of light on here too, just a little tiny bit of different tones. And then we're going to do the same over here. Add some over here. Clean spot on my towel. It's getting pretty ragged. That's why I keep all these old rags, you know, from old dish rags or wherever you can get them. Tell all your family to keep all their rags for you, all their tea towels that have holes in them, or small hand towels from the bathroom. These are all from my old salon, so I have loads of them. Alright, so now we can start getting that lighter color on there. Yeah, I'm not even worrying about trying to blend right now. I'm just getting the color on there. Try to keep it a little bit more camel-y on his side. And we're just going to worry about getting around these edges. Getting some nice coverage. The more raised you made your paste, the more of an edge you'll see. You guys that like the stencil idea, definitely if you need more help with your stencil, I do have another free project on my YouTube that you can go and check out too. And I'll show you some tricks that I did. But most of you have played around with stencils already, I think, in one way or another. So they're pretty easy to add if you still want to pop in different elements. kind of push that color into these holes here a little bit. So now that we have that all done, kind of very lately adding more camel onto that color. Like I said, you're just kind of dry brushing. It's wet, kind of goopy and wet, but definitely it's still just hitting the raised areas. Okay, so let's turn this the other way so we can get our perspective back. And so now I want to play around with the Pablo and the green. Okay, so I'm just kind of playing around with that fallish kind of color blend. Right, kind of one stroking away, I guess. Right, getting maybe that Pablo down the middle of the vein. A little bit more softer green on the outside. Let's double check my edge here. It's amazing you don't see it till you tilt yourself right over the top. Ooh, pretty. A tiny little bit of floating medium in there, guys, if you have a hard time getting it to blend. Fall into those little pieces. If you're a little slower, just do one side at a time. So you're doing the edge and then clean the edge and then do the other side and then clean the edge. Says if you do take a little bit too much time, it might dry on you. It'll be harder to erase. Even if you just wet it and then come back and start cleaning it off a little bit more, it just keeps it wet so that it's easier to erase. And we are going to go around these edges here a little bit more with some darker colors as well. Just notice some paddle missing here. Now they pop out, eh? Alright, and then we can always add lighter, like even the white pearls. Like if you put white pearl on top of this, it'll kind of brighten things up a little bit too. Alright, so it just depends on what colors you want to play with. If you want to sample something, like you got a piece of cardboard and you want to play around with a bunch of different petals and practice and leave them dry and then practice painting on top of just little petals like this or little leaves, make a bunch of little leaves on a piece of cardboard. Paint the cardboard a base color, just one color, right? Just so that you have paint on paint. And then that way you'll be able to practice a little bit more too on the side if you're not sure what color combinations you want to play with. You know, just do little tiny leaves, you know, a bunch of them. And then play with your cooler colors, darker colors, coppers, silvers, you know, and then you'll really get a chance to play around and before you commit to a canvas. Okay? So we're just going to let this area dry, but we can definitely still keep adding a little bit more to the background now. Trying to empty the bottom of this bottle here. So we're going to come over and pick up some floating medium and some of that ink blue. And I want to come in and add a little bit more depth. Around the edges here. So first we're going to do the blue and a little bit of a bigger band, right? You can have that blue wash everywhere. And then we're going to come in a little tighter with the black again. This one's definitely a lot more blue than my other one. So I'm trying to kind of just harmonize with the colors that are going on. If I hit a patch of more teal, you know, definitely I want to kind of merge a little bit of that teal in there too. Especially over here, but I still want the depth of the blue. Really help to clean things up. Oops. I love glazing and playing around with adding more depth on top. Like you'll never get that look all at once with color. You just gotta keep playing with it. Right? More of a watercolor look. Right? You can add more depth into that background a little bit more. On the edge, maybe. Oops. You can hit inside the lower areas a little bit more with a bit more color. See how that just falls right in there, that very watery wash. Right, so we can intensify those a little bit more. Right, if you just go even across the grain, sometimes that darker color will fall into those crevices. You can even add a little bit of shadow underneath those raised areas. Right, and just your brush will just fall right into those areas. It's really popping out now. Right, even some of your lower background colors. So over here I was lacking a little bit of coverage over here too, so I can do what I was doing earlier. So I can just kind of add a little bit more. Picking up similar colors. Wash it away. I'm trying to bend my brush so that it squishes into the corner there. See how those colors are popping out now? Okay, so now we can go in with the black a little bit. Alright, it's still a little bit wet, that's okay. It'll kind of just soften that black a little bit. Add a little more depth underneath. Just in the corners at the top. If it's too blue, just add, if it's too black, just add a little bit more blue into your black. It gives you a little bit more different shade than if you use Parisian. And, you know, you could, but I keep hitting the top there because I'm trying to go too fast. Get it in there and erase if you have to. A nice soft shadow. No hard lines. And swoop it out so it kind of merges and makes your colors a little bit darker too. And if you really want to intensify certain areas of your raised areas, add a little bit of shadow. Add a little bit more black into this here too, especially because I have so much black flicking around. Alright, so we will need a little tiny bit of white. And we're going to multi-load some black and white, and it can be a little translucent, guys, and a dirty white. Alright, so I'm adding, you know, maybe there's even blue in that white. That's okay. I'm making like a little soft white, okay, and very translucent. Okay, so now we want to start adding a little bit more stem, solid stems a bit more. Okay, pick up more of that white. It's kind of wet looking, right? So we want to flick a bit of these bottoms into the base here. A little bit of white. Just soft. Always add more elements. Very shadowy looking, very watery. And then we can pull a little bit more of an illusion of to go in with these stems. Right, so this is going to look like it's coming right off. Too black. Follow with the dirty white. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I want to first attach the stem. And then I'm making my little triangle. Flicking first with the black, and then you can kind of pull some white. Okay, and then this branch here is going to start coming. Remember, we kind of crisscross things, and you can pull this illusion, so this one looks like it's coming. Right off the edge of the canvas. So I'm going to pull a little bit more. Instead of putting the stencil in, guys, we're going to play a little bit more with these leaves. Too much color, just go and get some more floating medium, go over it again, and it'll make it a little bit more softer. And I do want these to kind of show, because again, we can play around with the watercolor effect on top of this white now. And that'll dull things down. Right, so we do want to figure out which one's going to be on top. Which is very, very soft, subtle. Debating if we need one more leaf in here somewhere now. Because this one's showing, I want to hide that one. A bit more floating medium. Kind of looks like a shadow behind it. Yeah, I'm trying to feel it, guys, right? Usually in threes, I'm trying to keep thinking of my triangle. But I think that's good. I didn't make 3 of these leaves. But we also have a lot of dimension here. I'm not sure if I like this one. Or maybe I like it better now because it's just a little bit of a illusion of it. There you go. Let it dry a little bit and then just lightly wipe it. New technique. Whatever works, guys, right? You're gonna be happy with it because I wanted it to be very subtle. Alright, so I'm gonna let this dry here now. And then we're gonna play around with the other one a little bit more. Okay. So some of my favorite colors definitely are the dragon flash and the green flash. Definitely, I love playing with those. I like playing with those more for like backgrounds. So sometimes I just need a tiny little bit. I'll just shake my bottle. And steal a little tiny bit of it from my lid. You can always pop tiny bits of dragonfly vases in the different colors, right? We got the greens there. More of your teals. And it's just like a wash, guys. It's not really heavy. And where I wanted to hit some of this dragon glaze. There's definitely a little bit more onto my leaves. Right. And pop a little bit of this darker color. Very, very, very lightly, guys. It's just kind of hitting the edges here a little bit. Adding a little bit of lighter shimmer to it. But it definitely, this is one of my favorites I use a lot, is the blue sapphire. It's nice and dark, and compared to some of the other ones here, so I'm just grabbing some out of my lid, working it into my brush, and I want to put some of this definitely onto my flower. So just kind of, I work it out of my bottle, but I just want to kind of soften the globs. I don't want it to be too globby. And you push it a little bit deeper if you want onto this. Get into some of those lower areas. And you can even hit a little bit right into the center here a little bit too. Merge that into some of that teal look. And this is where the dimensions start to really pop, guys. I didn't even really tap into the possibilities the first time around. I was kind of holding back, I guess. I was like, oh, try something simple, simple, simple. But then, you know, the more I started playing it, I'm like, no, this deserves more. Okay, so we're gonna pull out the blue quartz. Right, just to play around, and this is very similar to a silver. Like if you wet if you still have a little bit of that blue sapphire in your brush, and you go and you pick up a little bit of silver, you're still gonna get a little bit of that look. So I'm just kind of leaning my brush over to the side, right, and you can kind of get maybe just the edges a little bit more of a little lighter highlight. Just the edges, guys, on this one. I went a little deeper with the sapphire. Now I'm just kind of really, really, really light touch just to pop out that color. Okay, so this is like a very quick dry technique kind of that you can do, but this is, like I said, I'm just doing this very, very lightly so it's hitting the edge. Okay, so I don't want too much color on my brush. Okay, another way of doing that is grabbing different brushes available. Donna had a line of stencil brushes, the Fabric Creations stenciling brushes that you can use for stenciling into fabric. You need a little bit more stiff brush, or our scruffy brush would work as well. So what you're going to do is grab, you know, a good amount of color, work it into your brush a little bit, and then you're going to remove the excess off of. So this is a true dry brushing, and this is where you're just kind of tickling the very edge of your texture. Okay, so you need more paint. Do little sections at a time and build up that result you're looking for a little bit at a time. Right, smaller brushes, bigger brushes, you know, you can get into details a little bit more. I really like these for dry brush looks. Right, you can even put a little bit of this teal, or right on top of the teal. And you'll see all the light edges. I want to pick up a little bit more. I should just put some on my plate. Eh? This blue, whoa, too runny. And you can kind of just hit some of those textured areas. Just a little bit here and there. And then definitely we need to pop that up just a little bit more. I'm going to pull some of that paint back into the bottle there. And just give your bottles a good shake. And then these ones are definitely easier to work a little bit out of the lid. Pick up some color, knock it off, and then now I want to just hit the very, very, very center. Very, very lightly. And this will brighten things up too really nicely. You can hit the silver a little bit on your leaf. Sideways against it. I don't want too much shimmer on my black. I just kind of hit it on my leaf. Okay, so definitely if you want to add more swoops of shimmer through, you can. Maybe put that in a couple little different directions so that it looks a little more swoopy. Shadow effect. Just here and there. You don't want to hit your whole canvas. Right. I've got this rose gold that's quite nice too. This stuff strings a lot. You gotta be a little slower grabbing your paint because it's so thick. Right, so I just try to slow down. There we go. That's better. You need little hits of copper. So here I can put it on a little bit heavier. Just kind of rub it out. There, now I'm much happier with this one. And then all it really needs, guys, is dots. I'm just going to grab one of our smaller brushes, grab some white, little different pop to it now, eh? Okay, let's finish this guy up. Alright, so we're going to come over and I want to play around a little bit with some of this blue here in spots, just to kind of tone down this white and even a little bit of that tealy kind of color. just in spots. And you can even add a little bit more like blue too, right? A little bit more. Dark floating medium. Alright, so we're just adding tone now to that white. A little bit of green flash. Try to only put a little tiny bit. A little bit brighter, again going across the green. Sometimes you just hit the tops of it a little bit different. Too much. Definitely just pick up a little bit of solid color with it too. Very lightly across the greens. Trying to emphasize those recessed areas just a little bit, just going sideways on it, just very, very lightly. It's amazing how much look you get. Little flashes, little pops. Let them be streaky a little bit. Alright, now we gotta wash that blue and greens right out of our brush. Good. And oh my god, the choices of coppers and golds. Really, it's up to you guys. Like I said, play with them a little bit. We have our dark antique copper here. Get a little depth. In the center here. Just putting a little bit of eggplant in with a gold will give you a little bit of this look too. If you want to combine your colors that you have, it's got a little bit of a different purpley tone to it. Okay, so whatever's left on my brush, I'm just kind of hitting on the outside here. Just add some depth into that. And then I'm going to play around with some of my rose gold. A little lighter look. Just a very light dusting. Merge that into the gold. I'm going to hit a little bit of gold, rose gold over our leaves. Hopefully you guys can see the veins are popping out now. Soft Darken that black a little bit. And then we can even pick up our true gold. And there, I just want to hit the very edges. Just a very, very light touch. Anything that looks like a big one, a big raised area. It's a little heavier this way than dry brushing. Just knock some of the glob off so you're not too heavy when you're picking up paint. Right? You're very globby here. So we just want little edges. You can erase that too if you hit your canvas. And just the very edges. And then very, very lightly on all these little dots. Now these ones are a little easier just to grab just the raised areas, because we actually made more of a dot for these guys to be raised. Try and grab the edge of those leaves. Have your brush really flat. Very, very light if you want to try and get those veins. Little bit. Alright guys, I hope you learned a lot through the process of me changing things around. And then when you're totally happy with it, got some white spots there. When you're totally happy with it, you can always grab a little bit of blacky blue. Sign your work. Thank you so much for joining me for something a little different. And get a little bit of silver. And we can add just that little bit more pop on top of the white. Right over the black, right over the white. And there you go. That's better. Okay. If you want to do a little bit more of the same. I'm picking up gold. Always add. Let it dry, see how you like it. Oops. A little bit stronger silver. When it's dry, it'll sit a little bit more strong. Right? Brighter color. Alright, that's got a lot more pop on it now. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining me for these multimedia projects here. Hope you learned a lot. And you're not going to be afraid to play with your colors and layering and adding extra little pops in there. Whether you choose to put a stencil in there or if you want to try and do a little bit more with your pastes in your background. Gives you two different choices there. Okay, so I'll add all these new pictures to your PDF and you'll be able to see them in the pictorial process as well.